To say that David Pakman's performance of being incapable and ignorant of how to pronounce AIPAC strains credulity would be a massive understatement. In case you haven't seen it yet.
Outrageous claims suggesting that it's AIPAC or IPAC. I don't even know how it's pronounced. AIPAC, that is funding this show or other creators.
Thank you to basically the entire internet for immediately going back and finding footage as far back as 2019, where Pakman can clearly, capably pronounce AIPAC correctly.
AIPAC, support AIPAC.
A few moments later.
Outrageous claims suggesting that it's AIPAC or IPAC. I don't even know how it's pronounced. IPAC, that is funding this show or other creators.
David, I think the only outrageous claim being made today is by you that you don't know how to pronounce AIPAC. You want us to consider you a serious, independent journalist and a reliable voice of the new media, and you don't know how to pronounce AIPAC. The arguably largest source of foreign influence in our government, the largest source of money pouring in to elected officials in both the Democratic and Republican Party. After watching that clip this morning, I actually spent a little time watching some of David's old videos, and one stuck out at me in particular. This is from about a year ago. He has a segment where people on his Discord can ask him questions, and somebody called in and asked, why is it that what Hamas is doing is viewed as terrorism, but what Israel is doing is not? It's viewed as moral or okay. And this was David's answer.
The way they talk about Israel is not the same way that they talk about Hamas.
Okay.
It killed more civilians than Hamas.
Well, listen, there's two different things. Your first assertion was that what they're saying is that when Israeli civilians die, it's terrorism, but when Gazan civilians die, it's moral. I asked you who said that, and now you're taking a different claim, which I think is maybe one we can engage with more, which is just that there's different treatment of Israel and Gaza. Is that more fair? Is that what you meant?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, listen, there's two different things here. One is there are some media outlets that have a bias one way or the other. And that can explain how they cover the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There's another aspect to this also, which is that there's a difference between civilians as collateral damage, which is still tragic, but different than a policy of finding and killing civilians. Now, I know just by saying that, lots of people will be furious with me and they'll say, David, Israel does have a policy of deliberately...
Israel does have a policy of deliberately targeting civilians. Pakman's stance on the genocide in Gaza has been indefensible for quite a while now. Similarly indefensible is the United States government's position and support for the genocide in Gaza. That support has increased significantly under the Trump regime. The deaths of civilians have increased dramatically since Trump took office. Now, I covered this a number of weeks ago when I was discussing famine across the world and how we are seeing increased food insecurity and how famine is not just a naturally occurring consequence of natural disasters or droughts or however it's been fed to you, right? Famine is a man-made construct. It is an intentional act meant to starve civilians. Too many people in the United States have been fed this lie, right? The Irish potato famine was just something that happened because of the potato blight, despite the fact that farmers in lots of places around the world had no trouble feeding their populations when there was a tomato blight. I think too many Americans are ignorant of the fact that a famine is the last stage of a hunger crisis. It is entirely preventable, and more often than not, it is an intentional choice by a government, men in power, to starve vulnerable people. It is an intentional tactic in war, in genocide. It is obviously a human rights violation, and it obviously is targeting the most vulnerable because it is children that are between 2 and 4 times more likely to die in a famine than adults. It is always something that is targeted at civilians. And obviously, again, I talked about this weeks ago, but it bears repeating, the Trump regime intentionally, partnering with Israel, removed all of their aid distribution sites, would not let international aid workers come in, including UN aid workers, and decided to have only 4 sites for food distribution, all of which were overseen by IOF forces. Again, I described how that happened in great detail. You can go find that video on my YouTube. It was an intentional tactic. They knew people would die. Lots and lots of people, lots and lots of children would starve to death. And in fact, Human Rights Watch has said Israel is intentionally killing Palestinians who are desperately seeking food. Not only are they depriving people of food, but the limited points at which you can collect food are basically creating a fish in a barrel situation. According to Human Rights Watch, US-backed Israeli forces and private contractors have put in place a flawed militarized aid distribution system that has turned aid distributions into regular bloodbaths. IOF forces and private contractors of the United States government are killing starving civilians who are trying to get to a very limited supply of food to feed their starving children. Yes, David Pakman, that is an intentional choice. As Human Rights Watch has so clearly articulated, Israel is intentionally using starvation of civilians as a weapon of war. They're not collateral damage. They are the intended victims. This is a genocide, and you have been unable to say that, David. Instead, you have continued to regurgitate propaganda from Israel, and yet you expect people to believe that you are a credible voice of the new media, of independent journalism. I really encourage everybody to go read a piece in The Guardian that came out on July 31st by Emma Graham Harrison. It's entitled The Mathematics of Starvation: How Israel Caused a Famine in Gaza. According to this report, Israel calculated how many calories Palestinians need to stay alive, and then they're intentionally only letting a fraction of those calories in. Not only have they basically ended all farming in Gaza, they have also banned all fishing. Every single calorie that Palestinian families need to survive must be brought in from outside of Gaza. I mean, we know that Israel has been manufacturing a hunger crisis in Gaza for many, many years. They have just now escalated it to the state of a famine. According to this reporting from The Guardian, Israeli officials have been intentionally putting Palestinians on a diet, calculating how many calories the population needs, and then intentionally limiting it since 2006. The Famine Review Committee, an independent group of experts that scrutinize IPC alerts, said food shipments have been highly inadequate. Their analysis of the food packages supplied by the GHF shows that their distribution plan would lead to mass starvation, even if it was able to function without the appalling levels of violence that have been reported. Even if they were not shooting civilians who are trying to get food to feed their children, those children would still be starving. Famine is an intentional tactic. It is a war crime. Israel has calculated this down to the calorie. I can think of no greater red flag that a news outlet or journalist is not credible. You should be suspicious of their motivations and what they are saying than if they continue to spin what is happening in Gaza as anything other than a genocide. If they continue to diminish the harm that the Israeli government and the IOF are doing to the people of Gaza, that person is, in my eyes, not a credible source. And for someone to act like they don't know what AIPAC is, when they have skewed their reporting to be staunchly on the side of Israel for, months and months and months, since October 7th, if not before. Now, I don't subscribe to David. I've never been a fan of his, so I may have missed something. Someone correct me if he has come out and said that what's happening in Gaza is a genocide and that Israel is responsible, because I haven't seen any evidence of that. For him to set himself up as a voice of independent journalism and then expect us to believe that he doesn't know what AIPAC is or how to pronounce it, that he's ignorant of the ways their foreign influence buys our politicians, shapes our politics, and the spending of our tax dollars. Give me a fucking break. Give all of us a fucking break.